Just before I do get started, I want to say on camera, hi everybody, welcome. It's good that you've joined us. And to Richard and Rebecca out in France, I want to say exactly the same thing Mark did, and that is you've built well. And this house has sent you into the nation of France. Friends, you and I have sent them. We've released them to go because on their hearts is a message for the nation of France. And you here in this church this morning are a part of the apostolic sending of the gospel into other nations. That is huge, friends. That is massive. So don't ever think you're not a part of International Crossing. Because as we've sent you, we release you to be a blessing to that nation. This morning I'm going to be speaking on a subject and a part of Scripture that you all know. And I am going to show you, as soon as you start hearing me read it out to you, you will know the message and you will have an opinion. And that's okay. In faith school this morning, I was asked last week if I would speak about kingdom culture. When you get given a topic and you must speak on it, I feel a little bit like, wow, I'm going to have to search. And I've been searching. And the next thing, everything just started to flow out. And something happened in that meeting this morning that had touched some people in that meeting to the point where they received something, an encouragement, or possibly even a revelation for themselves that life is really worth living. But it's worth living well. It's worth living with eyes wide open. It's worth living ready to be used. So come with me, please, to the book of Luke and chapter 15. Isn't it nice for me? I've already got it out there. I don't have to look. I'm just ready to go. But I'll give you a moment to get there. This is the story that speaks of Jesus' parables. It's one of his parables. He starts to unravel a story. But the thing I want to invite you as I read it this morning is that we would delve into the culture Jesus was speaking to. What does that mean? Just to get us on the same page, if it's okay. I'm South African. I sound different. Apparently, you say a couple of things that really stir my mind up. One of them is y'all. And apparently, I don't even say that well. But I was thrown completely out on Thursday night when somebody said, all y'all. I had to hold on. Say, what? But apparently that's normal. So the radical challenge in our cultures is, my culture isn't better than your culture. Nor is your culture better than mine. The principle we should be looking at is the kingdom of heaven's culture. Because there are Islamic people in Pakistan getting born again by the Spirit of Jesus, and their culture is being radically challenged by the kingdom culture. Okay? So I'm saying this because I want to grip you into, we need to see some things from where they were said and how they were said. Now, there's I forgot your youngest boy's name. Preston. Now one day, Preston was in his mother's arms walking down the aisle, and I started speaking to him in Afrikaans. Afrikaans is a South African language. It's my wife's language, and for those from home watching, I'm not going to speak any, so relax. But the principle here is as I was speaking to Preston in Afrikaans, he started to connect with, I don't understand you. This doesn't sound like anything I know. And what it did was it allowed him to connect with me, where he remembers my name. Every now and then when I walk down, he will just shout out, Simon. I don't know how he says it, but it's an interesting way. But what I'd like to suggest with Mark's attitude of we need to get ready to be challenged for change is that when we leave here today, you're going to be connecting with people. And they're not going to hear your words. They're not even interested in your language. They want to see your lifestyle. They want to grip your culture. They want to grip what your faith is. What is it? You don't have it, you don't see it, but what do you believe? They want to grab a hold of us. This world is longing for you and I to believe that Jesus Christ is King and go and live it. They don't want us to tell them how bad they are. Because if you remember, when you were back in the world, you knew how bad you were. You didn't need reminding. What you needed was a compassionate Father. So, with that in mind, let us get to the scripture. Luke chapter 15, and I'm going to read from verse 11. A certain man had 2 sons. Boom, you all know the story. The prodigal. But listen to this. And the younger of them said to his father, Father, give me the portion of goods that falls to me. So he, that being the father, divided them his livelihood. And not many days after, the younger son gathered all together and journeyed to a far country, and there wasted his possessions with prodigal living. Verse 14. But when he had spent all, there arose a severe famine in the land, and he began to be in want. Ever been in need? And then he went and he joined himself to a citizen of that country, and he, the citizen, sent him into the field to feed swines. Whoop. And he would gladly have filled his stomach with the pods that the swines ate, and no one gave him anything. Verse 17. But when he came to himself, he said, How many of my father's hired servants have bread enough and to spare, and I perish with hunger? I will arise and go to my father and say to him, Father, I have sinned against heaven and before you, and I am no longer worthy to be called your son. Make me like one of your hired servants. He arose and came to his father. But, this is the biggest but I've ever come across in the Bible, because this is the challenge. Whoa. When he was still a great way off, his father saw him and had compassion on him, and ran and fell on his neck and kissed him. And the son said to his father, I have sinned against heaven and in your sight, and am no longer worthy to be called your son. But the father said to his servant, Bring out the best robe and put it on him, and put a ring on his hand and sandals on his feet, and bring the fattened calf here and kill it. And let us eat and be merry. For my son was dead and is alive again. He was lost and is found. And he began to be merry. Now his older son was in the fields, and he came and drew near to the house. He heard music and dancing. So he called one of the servants and asked what these things meant. Verse 27. And he said to him, that being the servant, to the older brother, Your brother has come, and because he has received him safe and sound, your father has killed the fattened calf. But he was angry and would not go in. And therefore the father came out and pleaded with him. So he answered and he said to his father, Lo, these many years I have been serving you. I never transgressed your commands at any time, and yet you never gave me a young goat that I might make merry with my friends. Verse 30. But as soon as this son of yours came, who has devoured your livelihood with harlots, you killed the fattened calf for him. And he said to him, Son, you are always with me, and all that I have is yours. It was right that we should make merry and be glad. For your brother was dead and is alive again, and was lost and is found. Whew. It's a story we've had, and I don't know about you, but I've been told it was a bad boy against a good boy. I guess there's a message in there, but I don't believe this is a good or bad son story. I don't even believe this is about good and bad stuff. I believe there's messages in here that we need to delve into so that we can start understanding what was Jesus saying in the parable. Remembering, parables were stories at the time to the people that people could pick up and engage with. So in other words, today I need to share with you so you can pick up in our culture that we both live in and understand what took place. Because Jesus was telling the story. It's a parable. He was showing the people something they needed to learn. And it wasn't that a young boy took his inheritance and squandered it. We've kind of done that. Some of us. Others have been wise stewards, and we've stuck around until they wanted to have a party without us. And we've got upset. So we've been on both sides of this thing. It can't be about the sides. It must be more. We've also heard the story that when the robe was put on, he was reinstated, and when the ring came on, he was established, and sandals and the authority and everything was reinstated. I want to challenge that this morning and say, that wasn't the moment. Let's have a look. Let's go a little bit deeper. In verse 12, the young boy asked for something that he was going to get anyway. Where was his mind? He wanted something else. Come on, what do we want? If you say you're born again, if you don't say you're born again, relax, it's okay. But I'm telling you, when we come into that encounter of having given our life to God, we seek what He wants, not what we want. All of a sudden we become hungry for what He wants. We see stirring up deep waters, and we get into this place of knowledge. He's doing something for His glory through us. We're not the glory. We're not the answer. He is. But we are His vessels. And if we're going to be His vessels, we need to be prepared and ready to know what the message is in our culture. In verse 14, he lost it all. He didn't have anything left. He was sent to feed swines, pigs. In his culture, he was to have nothing to do with pigs. Nothing. Let alone be in their pit, wishing he could eat what they were eating, let alone. And yet, he went from having it all to losing it all to just having nothing. And in that nothing place, it says here that he came to himself in verse 17. You and I need to come to our senses somewhere along the life. Some of us have done that, and we received Jesus, and then we had to come to our senses momentarily afterwards just to stay focused. Coming to our senses is not one idea, done and dusted. It's as we go down with it. And the more we get on with it, the more senses we need to come to. And that being, Lord, what are you doing? You see, this morning, this message beats firmly in my heart because I see some things in here that settle it for me. But I know He's dealing with you too. He's stirring up something with us this morning because He's drawing us into a deeper knowledge for effectiveness. Richard has been teaching us leadership, and in that he says the one principle of leadership is the responsibility. And the responsibility of taking out your faith into this world is coming because He's going to use you, and you're not even going to need words. So those of you who say, I don't speak well, it's not about that. It's about the way you live. Oh, well, then I'm going to live like this. No. It's the character within us that gets built out of these things. Okay, let's get back to it. He came to his senses and he said, how many of my father's hired people have more to eat than I do now. They even have some bread left over. I'm going home. What did he do then? He got up. Might be simple, but some of us might need to get up. We make decisions, but now we've got to get out and action it. Get up. Go home. That get up sometimes, that's a tough one. Because we got some good ideas. Oh, and we got some great ideas that we want to sit down with and just be comfortable and happy and just leave me, I'm happy. Get up. During worship, there was that song stirring up. We asked together. There was actually an excitement amongst us about the waters to be stirred. I could hear it. Some of you were singing from a place of, yeah. I don't know if that's, but I've heard you say it. I believe it's an exciting word. But don't be afraid to get excited. Because sometimes we don't celebrate enough what we have. Anyway, let's come a little bit further. He got up and he went to his father's house. But remember, he had a prepared speech. Father, I sinned against heaven and against you. I'm no longer worthy to even be called your son. Just make me like one of your hired hands. He had predestined what will take place in his father's presence. And boy, did he get an opportunity to share his speech. He gets there, and this is where it starts getting incredibly interesting. Verse 20. And he arose and he came to his father. But when he was still a great way off, his father saw him and had compassion and ran and fell on his neck and kissed him. I'm going to leave that there but come back to it. Verse 21, and the son said to his father, he said to him, Father, he had his opportunity to share his prepared speech. Do you know that you and I are often like this? We have financial difficulties and we prepare a speech. We call it a prayer. And we tell God, I'm going to tell Daddy that this isn't going well. But what generally happens is Daddy doesn't listen to our complaint about it. He answers our need. And what we need to do is start getting more and more aware of what Daddy's about. Because this young boy had his speech. He practiced it and he prepared it and he said it. And it wasn't even listened to. See, this is the grace and the compassion that our Daddy has for us. He knows it's tough, but he wants to answer our needs. Anyway, let's move on, and it says here, this is the answer the young boy gets after his speech. Zero, nothing, nada, nikis. This is a Zimbabwe word for nothing, nikis. And it says, but the father said to his servants, bring out the best robe and put it on him, and put a ring on his hand and sandals on his feet, and bring the fattened calf here and kill it, and let us eat and be merry, for the son was dead and is alive again. He was lost and is found, and they began to be merry. Okay, I want to go back to verse 20. The boy arose, and from a far distance his father saw him. And this is where it's starting to get interesting. This is where I camped for years. What is happening? Because this father saw his son from a distance. His father was full of compassion. And out of the compassion, he ran. The father ran to the son. And when he arrived, he threw himself around his neck and he kissed him. In many cultures today, we don't kiss our sons. We need to be careful because this isn't talking about perversion nonsense. This is talking about purity of father's love. And when we get into that, we start to ask ourselves this question: what was the kiss about? Man, he hasn't seen him in a long time. This boy had a speech. It was all done and prepared and everything came out. But the father was full of compassion and he hugged his boy and he kissed him, but he ran. Okay, here's now where the culture comes in. Jesus was speaking to people who looked at this father who was wealthy. He owned some property. He had money to give to his son, so he must have been well off in this culture and in this time. He had enough to be able to kill the fattened calf. He had some stuff in reserve. Doesn't say how much, doesn't say all this, but the image of the listener in this culture would be saying, this is a wealthy man. If that be true, this man would have worn a robe right from the top right to the feet. We don't wear those anymore, thank Jesus. Whew. I don't know about running in a dress, but I couldn't do it. But that's what it would have looked like. For this man to have run, he would have had to have picked up the robe to allow the legs to move. And for him to run from a far distance, for some of us that's to the back door, but he saw his son from a distance and he ran to him. For him to run in that authority, he would have had to pick up that cloak. Picking up that cloak in his village was disrespectful. His village people watching him running with his would be going, what is this wealthy man doing? How dare he expose his legs like that? You see, this father didn't care about the image they would have on him. He cared about the kiss. Whoa, hold on a minute. What has this kiss got to do with it? See, this father ran, and to do that, upwards of the dress, and off he runs, okay? But this father, when he got there, he threw his arms around the neck of his son, and he kissed him. He sealed the boy's fate then and there on the kiss. You know that the kiss from that father to that son meant this, that the village could not judge him anymore. Because the father had said, to me, nothing between us. But why did the father run? The father ran because in this culture, listening to this, spitting is a very authoritative thing. If you were sick, you had leprosy or something like that, they would spit on you, curse you out, and you had to stay outside of the village. If a village person had seen that boy before the father did and spit on him, the son would never have been allowed back home according to the culture. So the people listening to this were recognizing what Jesus was saying. How dare this man lift up his robe and run like that? Oh my goodness, what's he doing? He's sealing his son's fate. What kind of a father does this? That's the way they heard it. You and I hear it very differently. We hear it, the robe and the ring. And yes, they are important things. Don't get me wrong. But the image here has to come back into culture because for you and I today, we need to be kissed with the kisses of his mouth. We sing songs with these words in. And I don't have that gift to break into song right now, but man, we need some kiss me with the kisses of your mouth. Your love is sweeter than wine. You and I need this. For some of us, you need it today. Because you've got to get out there and do some stuff that is tough for you to do. But it's with the kiss of the Father that you're going to get up and do it well. It's with the knowledge of being lost but found. It's going to set you on fire. It's going to get you to get up and not worry about what others have to say about the way you're living, but to get on and live it. I brought these notes, so I better just show you that I've got some, and I'm going to turn the page. I might have to turn this on as well. We've done that. When the father kissed his son, what did he save his son from through the kiss? Was the village people cursing him out. Remember, lepers, anyone sick, anyone found in adultery was either stoned, dead, or cast out in terms of the judgment. They weren't allowed to come anywhere near people, and if they did, they had to shout, "Unclean! Unclean!" Okay? Don't know about you, but I wouldn't like to walk through Walmart with somebody screaming, "Unclean! Unclean!" In fact, if we got tight into this culture, they would be out on the interstate, not allowed in. So our cultures have changed a lot. We don't have that anymore. We become nice. In fact, we become quite polite. People we don't like, we just say, "Hi, y'all." I believe there is another saying that I've come into understanding of, and that is, "Bless y'all," can mean very different things in Southern culture. I thought from a Christian born-again point of view, "Hey, bless you too, brother." And he looked at me as if to say other things. You see how important it is to get into what was being said so we can understand? Because when people come to us, we need to be able to say stuff that they understand. Let's just have a quick look, if you would. Come with me to Mark chapter 8. Let's have a look at some of this culture. Here's a man who was blind, and he wanted to be healed of his blindness. When he went to Jesus, this is what happens. They came and there brought a blind man and begged him, that being Jesus, to touch him. So he took the blind man by the hand and led him out of the town. And when he had spit on his eyes and put his hands on him, he asked him if he saw anything. I'm just going to stop there because culturally we're going to miss this. This blind man gets presented in front of Jesus. The first thing Jesus does is take him by the hand and lead him out to where the cursed are. Sorry, I'm not supposed to go that far. Imagine the blind man's position. I'm blind, and the first thing the man who can heal me does is he starts leading me out of the village. Oh, the same judgments are coming. Oh, I'm going to be thrown out. Even this great king is going to throw me out. Then it gets even worse, because Jesus spat in his eyes. Here comes another culture shock. You have a whole bunch of tissues down each side of the row, so that should you become emotional and get full of substance, you can blow it out. That's what they're for. It's to help you. In certain cultures around the world, they do not see this as even a part of the cleansing of these passages. When you walk into the streets of other cultures, Khartoum in Sudan, Karachi in Pakistan, if you walk into these places, people are spitting on the floor everywhere. If you walk there, you're kind of like, ooh, that's my culture doing that. But they see no offense in it. When I'm speaking to a man and the next thing he starts cleansing or clearing and getting ready to clear his throat, I'm a little bit like, what are you doing? And it's on the floor and he just looks at me like nothing's happened. And I'm looking for a handkerchief saying, try this. And he's looking at me going, what's that piece of cloth for? You see, culturally we forget that Jesus was in a time where the spit was the condemnation. And he used the very thing that world was condemning people at. And this man started to see. What happened? He says, when he spat in his eyes and put his hands on him, and he said to him if he saw anything. And he looked up and he said, I see men like trees walking. He's gone from being blind to having something. Wow. Jesus once again puts his hands on. In verse 25, then he puts his hands on his eyes again and made him look up. And he was restored and saw everyone clearly. Friends, culturally, you and I need to understand this when we read this, that blind man went through some stuff, even in the presence of the Great One. Jesus did some things. Why? I think he was trying to encourage this man, because he said to this guy, don't go back into the town. Don't go telling them. Just go live this thing out. If I was his public relations officer of that day, I would be saying, Jesus, this kind of guy needs to get back in there and tell them about what's happened. Jesus doesn't need public relations officers. He needs believers who have had the kiss, who get up and go and live again. Because you see, as we continue the story, the kiss, the seal of that boy's fate, is what this father was all about. I need to save the lost boy. And he reinstated him fully. Wow. Some of us say he didn't deserve it. Come on. We look at people out in this world today and go, oh well. I mean, there are some people out there we just don't like. Guess what? There's many that don't like us at all. So your clever words and mine are not going to help. It's this kiss that's going to seal our fate, friends. Because he wants to put the robe on you. He wants to put the ring on you. He wants to establish. He wants to put you in new sandals. Wow. There's some things you guys do in America that is profound to me. Really. I mean, it's awesome. But I don't know if you see it. I see men wearing rings that are massive. And they seem to show an achievement or a membership of something. But it's a big ring. And they wear them with pride. Friends, that symbolizes something. But they wear it with no fear. In fact, pride. I achieved something. Nothing wrong with a new ring. But when it's just jewelry, you are missing the point. You see, I have a ring of a covenant with a woman. This one. You might not be able to see it from there, but it's my ring. And she gave this to me 27 years ago at a ceremony we had called a wedding day. And at that time, I put this ring on with zero knowledge of what it meant. 5 years later, I got born again. And then they started to show me that this is a sign of a covenant kept in heaven. It isn't the covenant, and it isn't the power, but it is the sign. It doesn't mean you have to wear rings, but what it does mean is I respect this covenant. I fortunately never lost it, but if I do not wear it, does it mean I'm not married? I'm still married to an amazing woman who's actually going to be making her way here and should arrive next Sunday. Yeah. She was preaching in South Africa this morning, probably about 3:30 this morning, our time. She was preaching in the church in South Africa. So that was really cool for us as a family. Having said that, what does the cloak mean? The Scottish got it right, and in this culture it had everything to do with the family honor and name. Who you are, your establishment, here it's being put back on you. You are my son. You are part of this household. What is your surname? Just think of your surname for a minute. Sometimes we sign it. My surname is Radford. I got it from my father. And he got it from his. And. But it's Old English. Originates as Old English. And it goes back from a place where it was given. But you know what? It's not where it really originated from, but it comes to the point that Simon Radford needs to be accountable for his faith in Jesus, and therefore my name becomes an authoritative understanding with when somebody says Simon Radford, that they can connect with something. Because when some names get thrown out there, people have a very different response. Before Jesus, they had a very different response. I was blessed to have some mates when I was younger. And then I got born again in between. I did some Bible study, some theological courses, qualified as a pastor in my country, and through purely academic things, they call me Reverend, which is crazy. Because I am not reverent. I am just like you. I'm a person. God has blessed me with things that I don't deserve. Okay? Now I want to be very careful. That word reverent has only been established to me because I did a government exam. And in the government's eyes, that is an authoritative. Now I'm allowed to legally stand and marry people. I'm a legal, registered reverend in my government. But before Jesus, I'm a son. These titles of the world are not the thing that makes us. I'm a son. But you see, it's the attitude of the son that is important. Let's get back to the scripture. Verse 25, now when the older brother was in the fields, he came near, he drew near to the house, and he heard the music and dancing. So he called one of the servants and he asked them, what are these things? What do they mean? And he said, the servant said to him, your brother has come, and because he has come, because he has received him, that being a father, has received him safe and sound, your father has killed the fattened calf. Verse 28, this brother who's faithful in everything is now angry. He's got an attitude problem. He's got upset. He's not going into the party. I'm not celebrating. He doesn't deserve it. Then this happens. Verse 29. Verse 28. But he was angry and would not go in, and therefore his father came out and pleaded with him. Do you remember I showed you the father lifting up his dress and how the village people would see that as like, what are you, crazy? Exactly the same thing here. A father to leave a celebration because another son is not willing to come in and go out and speak to him is unheard of in this culture. Hold on, mister, you are better than this. You are fully authoritative. You don't need to go and beg this man. Anyway, he goes out and he says, your brother was lost, he's now found. It is time to celebrate. Coming back into the closure of what I'm saying here today. This kiss is what happens when you and I come to that place of salvation. And I want to be careful in how I say this. Because if you've received Jesus through an altar call, that's awesome. But you'll also be challenged in your spirit about that choice. And inside of you, you know for a fact when you're walking up to this altar call to give your life, that's it. Because sometimes we could do this by the needs. I'm in a pig's pit. I need to eat. So this guy told me about a Mercedes-Benz. If I come to Jesus, I'm going to get one. So I'm coming. That, you see, the kiss isn't about what you heard. It's about what you're coming into. And when you come into the kingdom of heaven, you start realizing there are still tough times ahead. But you can get through them. There are miracles available to us. We just need to be ready for them. We need to be hearing what our dad's business is so we can get on with it. That's what born again starts coming into. In Romans chapter 8, we get encouraged with this knowledge that the same Spirit that raised Jesus from the dead is living inside you and me who believe. If this is true, then it's time for us to start getting really excited. Because if the same Spirit that raised Jesus from the dead is inside you and me, I'm wanting it to come out. Woo! I don't want my culture to get in the way, or yours. I want this glorious power and authority to start coming out. When I was in Bible school, college, we were introduced to some old understanding and thoughts. And there was an old-time teacher who taught his students on evangelism. If you're not like Mark, where it's easy to tell people about Jesus, maybe you're a little timid and go, do you go to that church? Which church? I don't know where we stand in this thing. But anyway, this man taught on evangelism. And at the end of it, he finished teaching, and one of the students was a little confused. What are we doing? He says, I want you to now go and evangelize the world. And one of the students raises up his hands and he says, what do we do? And he said to them, preach the gospel always. And if you really, really have to, use words. This kiss gets us to preach a gospel that we don't need words to. This reinstating knowledge gets us to preach a gospel that will come out of us, even if we were bound and unable to say anything. That's how great this salvation is. That's the authority we live in. This morning, I sense there's some of us that are in many different places with this message. Challenged, unchallenged, sitting there going, what did this South African even say? And I want to say to you that this story is not about two boys and a father. This story is about three sons. The young, the older, and Jesus himself. Do you know what the younger brother really needed? He needed a secure older brother who would look into his father's face and see the pain of the loss of his son. And say, because of that pain in my father's eyes, I am going to go fetch my brother. I cannot stand this pain in my father's eyes anymore. I am going to fetch him. This older brother didn't do that. But Jesus did for us. You see, this brother, Jesus, telling the story, did it all for us. And I would like to close this message by saying, if it's not a story about three sons, then what is it a story about? It's a story about an absolutely radical father who, no matter how much his kids messed up, good or bad, he ran across fields and he kissed them. He went out of celebrations and humbled. He caused the village to look at him like, what kind of a man are you? But for the love of his sons, gave up everything, that they would have everything. This morning, there's some of us in this room that could be needing our fates sealed by this kiss. It's not a human kiss. Maybe your faith has been dwindled by some experiences. And I believe this morning God wants to encourage you. Maybe this morning you're here today and you've never made that decision, but something inside of your heart says, I want to know a father like that. I didn't have that on earth. And man, if that's what Daddy is like in heaven, I want to know him. If that's you this morning and the Spirit is stirring, I want to really honor you by saying, don't be afraid to respond to him. And what I would like to do, instead of trying to make in a moment an event now in this moment here, to call you up, because it's not about responding to me, but it's about coming to this extravagant Father. And if you're here this morning and you say in your heart, I want to give my life to this Jesus, the Son who has come to fetch me, then I want to say to you, before you leave this place, to come and see me. Because I'd like to pray with you and share some things that are vitally important. But I feel this message this morning is about some of us who have been walking with him for years and become a little culturally blind. And we've made it about us and our feelings. We've even made it about what he didn't do for us instead of what he did do. I shared this with the guys in the faith school, and I'm going to read it so that I don't get it mixed up. But my wife and I were going through some stuff. The Lord had told me to plant a church. He's told me to do a few of those, and I've been obedient. And on this particular one, I had heard from him to go and plant a church in a new town in South Africa, and I knew for a fact that was God for me. And that's all I needed, and I was going. And along the way, my wife and I started to get itchy-scratchy with each other. This means it wasn't going well at home. And I remember saying to my wife this, Ephesians chapter 5, verse 22. I said, the Lord has told us to go and do that work in that town, and we're going to do it. Even though the Bible says, and it does. Ephesians 5, verse 22 says, wives, submit to your husbands as to the Lord. For the husband is the head of the wife, as Christ is the head of his church, and he is the Savior of the body. I said that to my wife. But I said it because I was frustrated that she wasn't doing what I wanted her to do. And she said this to me. She said, Simon, if you would love me like Christ loved the church and gave himself up for her, I will submit to you. But you need to get that right first. And I was a little bit annoyed because I got the Bible out first and I gave it to her first. And she came back at me with wabah. Let me just tell you what she was saying. Verse 25. Husbands, love your wives just as Christ also loved the church and gave himself up for her, that he might sanctify and cleanse her with the washing of water by the word, that he might present her to himself a glorious church, not having spot, wrinkle, or any such thing, but that she should be holy and without blemish. Friends, this message this morning is about coming into that place. There's a Father who's extravagant. He's made a way for us. Our cultures need to get out the way so we can see His kingdom now and allow His kingdom to come and sort us once and for all. This morning, I am going to encourage you to respond to Him, not to me or anything else, but to His kiss. If you in any way in your life need encouragement of that kiss, I'm going to ask you to start responding to Daddy now. Doesn't mean you have to come up, but if you want to come up, if you're burning in your body to say, I need this, and nothing's going to hold you back, you just come. Don't worry. But if you're sitting there going, I need this kiss to seal some things in my life, I want you to start responding to Daddy. So how do I respond appropriate? Well, this father ran across the field from a distance. I don't know that we should be doing that in this small room. But I don't know when last you just fell prostrate before Daddy. I don't know when last you just got up and responded to Him. But I know you long for it. So I'm going to encourage you to not look at anybody else around you. Don't worry about what they're doing. But just stand up for Daddy. Because He wants to meet you. See, you're going to have to come to your senses. And coming to your senses means make a decision today. Seal it. But please remember this. There will be a celebration of which you're going to have to attend. There's going to be a celebration of this event that you're going to have to live with all the days of your life. And in that celebration, you're going to have days where you just rejoice and dance and kick your feet like a calf out of a stall. And then there'll be other days that you'll be questioning, what did Daddy do to me? But in it all, He will never leave you, and nor will He ever forsake you. If you sense that's you, why don't you just stand? So I know who I'm praying for. Please, but don't respond to me. If the Spirit and you feel in Daddy, this is happening with you, that's awesome. Lord, I ask that you would just touch us with the firm affections of the kisses of your mouth, and seal and deal and show complete and utter what you've called us into. I want to thank you this morning that it's your grace that is sufficient for us. It's not our ability, it's not our talents, it's not even our healing, it's yours. And I want to give you all the glory and all the honor. For yours is the kingdom, it's the power, and it is the glory. Not just for today, but forever and ever and ever. With this in mind, I thank you, Holy Spirit, for ministering to us your peace. There's those amongst that may be facing some tough times. I just thank you that you will show us that we have hope in you. No matter what looks overwhelming to us, that you will make a way. Maybe even if we're in what feels like a pigsty, you'll get us out. Because we're making a decision to come to our senses that it is better in my Father's house than it is anywhere else. I thank you for this mercy. I thank you for your grace. And I declare this in Jesus' mighty name. Amen. This morning, I would like to take an opportunity to honor those of you who need to leave. I know it might have been a longish morning. and you're welcome to. But I would like to be here for a little bit longer because I feel Daddy wants to minister to some of you. Some of you might be saying, I need that. And you might well need to just wait whilst the ministering team will be able to do that. And I'd like Billy to join me and Mark. Maybe as the three men to stand up here and just, you can walk up to anyone if you want. And we would just like to spend an opportunity praying with you. You don't have to tell us. Daddy knows, okay? We're not daddies, or we are daddies in our own right, but we're not the daddy. But Daddy wants to touch and confirm and heal. But if you do need to leave, you do need to go now, you are released to do so. God bless you and have an amazing